Today we're gonna barrel age a cocktail, the Barrel Aged Bobby Burns. For this recipe, you're gonna need a large measuring cup, a bar spoon, a funnel, a fine mesh strainer, a bottle, a pitcher, and most importantly, a small oak barrel. The ingredients are Scotch, sweet vermouth, Benedictine, and a lemon peel for garnish. The Manhattan, the godfather of all spirit and vermouth cocktails, came into being sometime in the 1880s. From nearly the moment it was invented, bartenders started to make fancy variations on it. Those variations would be adding dashes or bar spoons of modifiers like Maraschino Liqueur, Absinthe, Curaçao, and others. In the 1890s, golf started to gain a foothold in the US. With it came an interest in all things Scottish, and Scotch began to be introduced to the American drink scene in a big way, particularly on the East Coast. And by the late 1890s, the Rob Roy, a Manhattan with Scotch, was popping up in print. So it's probably no surprise that variations on the Rob Roy started appearing soon after. The Bobby Burns was most likely a fancy variation on a Rob Roy. Most people will cite that the Bobby Burns as we know it came from the Savoy cocktail book from 1930. And in terms of our current cocktail renaissance, that's probably what helped it get noticed again. But it appeared in print long before that. Virtually the same drink appeared in the 1917 book Recipes for Mixed Drinks by Hugo R. Ensling. The only difference was that the Savoy called for an extra dash of Benedictine. There was another version of the cocktail printed 15 years earlier in 1902 in the booklet Fancy Drinks, published by the Bishop and Babcock Company. Only the drink had the slightly different name of Baby Burns, which for me calls to mind the image of young Goldilocks Montgomery Burns. The measurements were a little different, but the recipe used the same ingredients. As for the name, it's easy to see how a booklet from a hydraulic beer pump manufacturer could have made a typo in the name of the drink. The spelling of the cocktail recipes weren't their primary focus. They were there to sell beer pump parts. And they certainly had other spelling mistakes. There were rumors about the name of the drink, and that it came from a cigar store owner, or that it was named after a brand of cigars. But I tend to believe that the drink was named after the famed Scottish poet Robert Burns, the author of To a Mouse, and the more famous poem, Auld Lang Syne, better known as the New Year's Song. It would have been named after the famous Scotsman as an indicator that Scotch was used in the drink, much like how the Rob Roy cocktail was named after the Scottish folk hero Rob Roy McGregor. There were other Bobby Burns variations over the years, both in the spelling of the name and the ingredients used, but they were essentially fancy Rob Roys. In other words, a Rob Roy with a dash or two of a modifier like Maraschino, Absinthe, or Benedictine. Most recipes only called for a dash or two of Benedictine, but I took my cue of half an ounce of Benedictine from Summit Sips a long time ago, and I've been using that recipe ever since. And this version with a bigger dose of Benedictine works particularly well in the barrel. Usually when I make a fresh Bobby Burns, I like to make it with a lightly peated Scotch. However, in this case, since it's going to spend some time in the barrel, I like to make it with a smoke-free Scotch. The barrel's going to strip away a lot of that smokiness, so it's better to let it focus on bringing some of the vanilla, honey, and maple flavors out of the drink. The result is really smooth. It's a complex, exciting flavor profile, but one that's easy to sip. Building a cocktail for barrel aging is about being able to scale it. Since the liquid is what causes the wood to expand, which creates the seal, you're going to want to keep the barrel full. This recipe is for a 1-liter barrel. You'll have to scale it up for a 2 or a 3 or an even bigger barrel. And if you have a bigger barrel, you'll most likely need to age it a little longer as well. Assuming it's a new barrel, the first step will be to cure it. Do this by filling it with warm water and dumping it out again. It may leak from the head or the butt. In that case, you'll need to cure it again and again until it's ready to go. The idea is to get the water to expand the wood until it creates a watertight seal. In this case, however, I also used the barrel to age some sherry, an Islay Scotch, and a revolver after that. So some traces of those flavors were left behind in the barrel. Some caramely bourbon, chocolatey coffee, and a hint of smoke. It's not essential to season the barrel with any spirits or cocktails before you age the drink. But if you do, just keep in mind that some of the flavors from the previous agings will bleed through into this one. Once you're ready to add the booze to the barrel, measure 600 milliliters, or about 20 ounces of Scotch. Pour that in your pitcher. Measure 250 milliliters, or about 8.5 ounces of sweet vermouth. Pour that in your pitcher. Measure 150 milliliters, or about 5 ounces of Benedictine. Pour that in your pitcher. Give that a quick stir. then give it a small taste. Make sure you're putting a cocktail you want to drink into the barrel. Pop in your funnel and pour it in your barrel. Pull out the funnel, plug in the bung, and wait. In the case of a 1 liter barrel, 3 to 4 weeks is the sweet spot. You don't want to leave it in too long unless you really like the taste of oak in your cocktail. It's always a good idea to taste a little along the way. That way you can see how it's progressing. It may take a little more or a little less time depending on the barrel and how many times you used it. With this one, 30 to 45 days is a good benchmark, but let your taste buds be the judge. When it gets to the right place, unplug the bung, turn your spigot, and drain the barrel. It's normal to lose a little in the process. Stick in a funnel and pour it in your bottle using a fine mesh strainer. That'll help pick up any bits of charred oak that might have come through. Then slap on a homemade label, and you're good to go. When you're ready to drink it, measure out a couple ounces, pour it in a mixing glass, add ice, and stir it well to chill it down and give it some dilution. Then strain it into your chilled Nick and Nora glass. Cut a wide swath of lemon peel, being careful not to cut into the white pith. Express the oils of your lemon twist over the drink, rub it along the rim of your glass, and drop it in for garnish. And there you have it. With whiskey we'll face the devil. The barrel-aged Bobby Burns. Sláinte. Click here for more videos. Be sure to subscribe and check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For links, more info, and the printed recipe, check out the description below.